I'll give you whatever you want.
If someone offered you a penthouse, a closet full of designer clothes, first-class flights, and champagne on a private yacht, but asked you to walk away from the man who loved you the most, what would you choose? Claire Bennett made her choice in one afternoon. Years later, she stood outside that same husband's front door, with nothing left but regret. Let's find out how it all fell apart. But first, welcome to Fresh Start Stories, inspiring stories about life, change, and the courage to begin again. Like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. Claire Bennett had married Ryan for the way he looked at her, like she was the answer to a question he'd been asking his whole life. But by year 6, she'd quietly built a second life he barely saw. Junior designer at Ashford Interiors, the kind of firm that got hired for glass-lobbied towers and 8-figure show suites. At home, she was tired, stretched thin, counting grocery receipts. At the office, she was sharp, composed, the one partners trusted with the difficult clients. She told herself both women were her. She was starting to suspect only one of them still felt real. They had 2 children, Emma, 5, and Noah, 3. Ryan worked construction 6 days a week, hands cracked from concrete dust, still kissing his kids' foreheads every single night. He wasn't rich. He was never going to be rich. And lately, Claire had stopped hearing his exhaustion as devotion. She'd started hearing it as a ceiling. Derek Coleman walked into Ashford's downtown office needing a designer for the crown jewel of his portfolio, a 12-story tower with an investor walkthrough 6 weeks out. He asked for whoever's hungriest. The partners handed him Claire. The first meeting ran 90 minutes over. Derek didn't just approve her mood boards, he asked why she'd chosen each finish and actually listened to the answer. Site visits became working dinners to stay ahead of the deadline. Working dinners became something else entirely the night Derek told her, on a rooftop she never mentioned to Ryan, that a woman with her eye shouldn't still be waiting for partners twice her age to say yes. The gifts started small, a bottle sent to the office for closing the deal. Then they weren't small at all. A coat, a watch that cost more than Ryan made in 2 months. Claire told herself every single time that this was just how business worked at that level. She stopped telling herself that the night Derek kissed her in the freight elevator of his own unfinished building, and she kissed him back. She didn't leave with a plan. That was the part she'd repeat to herself later, uselessly, as if it changed anything. There was no spreadsheet, no countdown. There was just a Tuesday morning, an offer from Derek to move into his penthouse just to think, and Claire standing in her own kitchen realizing she'd already decided weeks ago. She just hadn't said it out loud yet. She left almost nothing behind. She didn't touch the joint account. She didn't take her grandmother's ring or the good silverware. Somehow, leaving with empty hands made the leaving itself feel lighter, as if the less she took, the less it would look like what it actually was. She packed one suitcase, wrote Ryan a note that said she was sorry and that she needed a different life, and left before he came home from the job site. The note didn't say goodbye to the children. She told herself, and Derek, that she'd send for them once things settled. She never sent for them. For a while, it really was everything she'd imagined. The penthouse, trips to places she'd only ever pinned to a mood board, a closet that cost more than Ryan's entire yearly salary. And then, 6 months in, Claire found a folder in Derek's home office she was never meant to see. Divorce papers from a marriage he'd sworn had ended years ago. It had ended 4 months before she moved in. There had been a wife. There had been a woman before the wife, too. One Derek had also once promised the world. Claire wasn't the exception she thought she was. She was simply the next name on a very old list. Back home, Ryan didn't fall apart in front of Emma and Noah, even though some nights he sat in his truck in the driveway just to cry where they couldn't see. He picked up extra shifts. He learned to braid Emma's hair from watching videos at midnight. He never once told the kids their mother had left them for someone else, only that she'd needed to go find herself, and some nights that half-truth cost him more than the full one would have. A year later, he met Grace, a pediatric nurse who first came into his life through Noah's asthma checkups. Grace never tried to replace Claire. She simply showed up again and again, with patience Claire never had time for. Slowly, without either of them planning it, Grace became the soft place the whole family had been missing. 2 years after Claire walked out, Ryan married Grace in the backyard, with Emma as flower girl and Noah refusing to wear shoes. Grace didn't just marry Ryan, she adopted his children with her whole heart, long before any paperwork made it official. Derek's business, it turned out, was built on debt disguised as success. Properties leveraged against properties, investors quietly pulling out one by one. When it collapsed, so did the penthouse, the cars, and the credit cards with Claire's name on them that Derek had opened without fully explaining what he was doing. Claire found herself the co-signer on debts she never agreed to and the owner of nothing at all. Then came the final blow. Derek had already found someone new. Bianca, 26, an intern at one of his last remaining companies. He didn't even tell Claire face to face. She read about his engagement in a gossip column 6 weeks after their relationship quietly ended over a text message that said simply, "This isn't working anymore." Claire looked closer at the engagement photo. Bianca's last name stopped her cold. It was her own cousin's married name. Bianca wasn't a stranger. She was Claire's younger cousin, the one Claire used to babysit, the one who'd once told her wide-eyed at 18, "I want a love like yours and Ryan's someday." Derek had simply moved on to someone even closer to the family Claire threw away. Broke, humiliated, and alone, Claire drove past her old street more than once before she finally worked up the courage to knock. Ryan answered. He was polite. He was calm. He was, in every way that mattered, done. "The kids have a mother," he told her quietly. "Her name is Grace. I won't take that away from them just because you're ready now." Emma, now 11, stood behind him in the doorway and asked her father quietly, "Who is that?" Not out of cruelty. She genuinely didn't recognize the woman on the porch. That question broke something in Claire that no amount of money ever could have. Claire never remarried. She moved into a small apartment across town and slowly started volunteering at a women's shelter, first out of guilt, then out of something closer to purpose. She sent Emma a birthday card every year. Most went unanswered. On Emma's 18th birthday, one came back with 3 words in careful handwriting. "Maybe someday." Dashy Claire keeps that card in a drawer she opens more often than she'd ever admit. Meanwhile, Ryan and Grace raised 2 children who grew up knowing, without ever being told directly, what real love looks like. It shows up tired. It stays through the hard years. It doesn't leave when the bank account is small. If you're sitting there tonight, tired, counting every dollar, wondering if the love you have is somehow less than, it isn't. The love that stays is never the smaller prize. It's the whole point. And if you've ever been the one who left, chasing something that looked bigger and brighter, it's not too late to become someone worth coming home to. Not the same home. A new one, built honestly, one true day at a time. If Claire's story reminded you what real love actually looks like, subscribe. We've got more stories like this one waiting for you.